Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Now What podcast. My name is Glenn Sharp. I am the president and CEO of Sharp Leadership Development. If you haven't visited the podcast, it is loosely based on the new book that I put out called Now What. This is a coaching journey between me and a character named Johnny. Johnny is an amazing mechanic in the airline industry, and because he's such a great mechanic, they made him manager of mechanics. Now what? So this is me over a 4-month period coaching Johnny, giving him the skills and abilities necessary to play on a level playing field with his peers. So everywhere, anything from performance appraisals to counseling sessions to just thinking differently like a manager is in this book. So it's a great way to really get your employees or even you on a level playing field with your peers as well. It's also a great way to start 2026 hitting the ground running. So I encourage you guys to pick up the book. You can certainly find it on Amazon. It's available in ebook and paperback. If you have visited the podcast before and you haven't seen me in action since the beginning of the year, we have kind of made a pivot to really talking about certain coaching scenarios. So I have contacted several of my coaching clients and asked them, is it okay for me to use some of your scenarios in my podcast? And I got permission from several dozen of them to actually speak to realistic, real-world scenarios, and that's what we're going to continue to do. So this is the third case that we are covering, and this is the case of Steve. Steven in Tampa. He's been a client of mine for a long time, and he is having some real issues. Hey, Glenn, I have a boss who's incredibly hard to deal with, and I'm growing more and more frustrated each day. I'm receiving ambiguous messaging from my boss, and it's causing me precious time and resources. He's very unapproachable. I understand this, Steven. Wow. And dismissive. So talking to him has proved to be a waste of time. I'm teetering on burnout, and I don't know what to do. Any help would be appreciated. So that's really what this episode is about, the dreaded burnout. This is as nasty as it gets in business. I can't stand this. And one of the reasons why I hate it is because when I coach individuals who have employees who are getting burnt out, there were signs. There were signs long ago, and they ignore the signs until it was too late, and then obviously they lose the employee. So this is good that Steven's not there yet, but he's starting to see signs. Steven, it is a great thing that you just did. Rather than just trying to deal with everything yourself, seek out help and try to get your issues solved, try to get some different perspective before you make a rash decision. So Steven, one of the things I want you to think about, and if you have viewed the podcast, you know how much I love this concept. I want you to change the way you think about your situation, about burnout. And this is a really deep topic, so brace yourself. We're going to get a little deep, Steven, in regards to you and your life and how you feel about things, because most of the issues with burnout is perspective, right? It is making sure that you have a good perspective on things and how important that is. So remember, your thinking drives your behavior drives your results. Caution, don't go after results when it comes to burnout, right? You got to change the way you think, then your behavior will change, the results will follow. So you'll notice on the screen, we shifted to a concept called compartmentalizing, and people talk about this all the time. And just 4 bars you see on the screen, very, very simple concept. You guys know me, I'm pretty simple, but this is kind of the way it works with regards to burnout. You have to be able to compartmentalize. Some people call it work-life balance, other people call it compartmentalize, but you can't take your life and your work life so seriously. Now you have to care, all right? And one of the things to think about is, whether or not you can leave work at home, or you constantly worried about it. So many people, when they're burnt out, they lose hope. And that's kind of how I define burnout, is when you lose hope. And if you've ever talked to anybody who's burnt out already, they're not even listening to you. They're literally already, just kind of dazed and just at another place. And it's kind of sad, to be honest with you. But the thought process is what's interesting, being able to leave work at work. And in time management, we talk about making sure that you really abide to the rudder effect. And the rudder effect, kind of like a rudder on a ship, it is who controls your rudder, you or do other people control your rudder? And I'll give you an example. I had a client one time. This guy was a CFO of an organization, and he looked horrible. I asked him, I said, what's going on with you, man? You're pale, you're losing hair, you got an ulcer, you're on the verge of divorce, you're losing your friends. What is going on? And he was telling me his life. And basically his life was 100 hours a week working. He was, again, a CFO. And he thought that's all he should do is work, work, work. And it was unfortunate, but that's kind of the way he thought. And that's what he thought was expected of him. So I basically asked him, is it worth it? Whatever job you have, is it worth it? Is it worth giving up your life? Because you look like your health is failing, you look like your life is about to be destroyed. And I told him, and this is going back to the rudder effect, I told him, listen, my advice to you is go have a conversation with your boss, all right? And you certainly want their opinion, you certainly want to respect them, but I want you to go in there and let them know, listen, I will work as many hours you want during the week, Monday through Friday, but the weekends are mine. And I'm leaving the laptop home, I'm leaving the cell phone home, and if you can't deal with that, then I quit. I'll put in my 2 weeks notice. But I'm not going to jeopardize my life. I'm not going to jeopardize my mental health for any job, right? And he did that. He took my advice. And his boss felt horrible. His boss was like, I had no idea it was this bad. Of course, his boss was a really busy guy, but still, he should have seen signs of this. But anyway, sometimes you have to kind of knock him over the head with it. But 30 days later, when I coached this gentleman, totally different person. Now, his hair hasn't grown back yet, or it didn't grow back yet, but he got the color back in his face. He looked like he just went on vacation, for goodness sake. I mean, he looked like a totally different person. And he said, the weekends are for me. And I started doing things for myself. I started dating my wife again. I started really having fun. And it was just a matter of getting my life back and controlling my life again. Right? And there's the rudder effect. Who controls my life? Me or do other people? And it's a tough question. It's a tough realization to come to when you start realizing that literally your work life controls your entire life. That's what work-life balance looks like. So you have to compartmentalize. When you're done, regardless of what happened at work, it is done. Leave it at work, right? And I know easier said than done, but what's the alternative? Right? What's the alternative, Stephen? When you get to a place where all you do is think about work, dream about work, it just dominates your life. And you can tell if it dominates your life, by the way, if your kids or your wife says to you, you're never around. And you say, what are you talking about? I was around yesterday. It's like, no, you were on your laptop yesterday. You didn't even answer me when I called your name 5 times. So that's kind of a good indicator that you're just not present, right? And it doesn't matter if you're in the room, you're not present. What's the point? Right? So that's really what compartmentalize means to me. And I want you guys to really think about that, how important that is in the grand scheme of things and when it comes to burnout. This concept, I know it's strange. I get it. You see a picture of a guy in a bubble on a stage. How weird, right? But if I was to teach anything as it relates to stress and burnout, things like that, this would be the concept. This is such an important concept to teach. I think this is really, one of the main lessons in life. Forget about work, but this is kind of a life lesson. I want you to imagine you're in a bubble. You're this guy. You're in a bubble. And anything in the bubble is the most important things to you. So everything else is outside my bubble. And the question I ask in the coaching room is, what's in your bubble and what's not? Should the car you drive, should your position at work, should the amount of money that you have in the bank, the house that you live in be in that bubble? Should anything else pierce that bubble? And I think what happens with people who are really unhealthy, and Stephen, I'm here to tell you, bud, your thinking is flawed and your thoughts are unhealthy. You gotta think to yourself, what's in my bubble and what is not, right? Is work in my bubble, right? Is my boss in my bubble, right? And it should be nothing pierces that bubble, nothing so important that it should get that close to you. And I'll explain to you just how bad it can be. Right? So I visited a friend one time, back in the day. He went to Cornell University, and to my surprise and horror, at Cornell they have a suspension bridge. At least they did, and the suspension bridge had stained rocks on the bottom. They were stained red. And the reason why is because kids from other Ivy League schools would go to Cornell University to commit suicide. Why? Because they got a D in economics. Right? Now think about how ridiculous that is. You ended your life simply because you didn't get a good grade. Well, a lot of these kids are valedictorians in high school. Their grades are their identity, right? And they get to college, it's a completely different, atmosphere. It's a completely different workload. And they're not the star anymore. They're just one of many, and they're struggling. And they literally thought the only way out is to end my life. How sad that is. But that's where you have to have a parent, you have to have a loved one who reprioritizes and reminds you of what's important in life. I mean, that is such a ridiculous scenario. But I know a lot of people who money is definitely in their bubble. I mean, they are defined by how much money they have in the bank or the kind of car that they drive. Some people, if they don't do well at golf, people that I know, literally are devastated and become nasty and horrible to people. It's like, what is important to you? And Stephen, I want to ask you, honestly, to really write down and talk to your loved ones about what's in your bubble. Because you're allowing work in, and you're allowing your boss in, and it's just a job, it's just a boss. You can always get another one. And I know you, Stephen, you are smart, you're highly educated. What's the worst thing that could happen? Right? You have to get another job. Obviously, you don't want that, but I want you to get your mind right first, because it doesn't matter where you go. You can go to another job, you can go to another company, but the problem still persists on what you allow in your bubble and what you don't. And I don't want you to make a change if it's just going to follow you to the next job. So that's really what we're talking about with regards to this. I think this is where so many people really get into depression, thoughts of suicide. This is where people really get in a lot of trouble when their priorities are out of whack and they don't realize what's in their bubble. This issue is called, we call it gravity issues. When I was at when I was at Luxottica and the Sendelaney material we presented, we call this gravity, this concept. It's a pretty simple concept. I ask classes all the time, who's the only person on this planet you can 100% control? And the answer, of course, is me, right? And then who can you influence? You can influence anyone, your boss, your coworkers. But then there are things that people spend a ridiculous amount of time on that they have no control or influence over. And just like gravity, you don't have any control or influence over things like politics, the weather, gas prices, things like that. And there are some things that you just have to accept. There are some people, got no control over them. They are who they are, and you can either let them drive you crazy or you can focus on the things you can control or influence. The biggest culprit in the training room and in the coaching room is the past. How many individuals literally let their past define them? They are completely focused on it. I had a class one time, and they started complaining about their company and their boss and things that have happened in the past. And I said to them, listen, I get paid either way, right? Either way, I get paid. So if you want to talk about the past, we can, but 4 hours from now, when the class is over, you're still in the same spot that you were 4 hours ago. You might as well start to talk about moving forward and start to come up with solutions, things that you can do something about, right? And it kind of changed the entire dynamic. And Stephen, I just wonder whether or not you are focused on what has happened to you and not focused on solutions and not focused on making things better. So I want you to really think that through. One of the things that is a common denominator in all burnout situations that I have either experienced myself or heard about others experiencing with their employees is if burnout is either really close or is happening, the only real way to alleviate it is get out of that situation. So if you're a manager, if you're an employee, either one, you need a change, right? So the change might be moving to another department, it might mean moving jobs, it might mean, boss, I need a vacation, right? Like similar to that CFO, I need to change my complete schedule and make sure that I am doing things different. But you need to get out of that situation. You need a reprieve from the stress from what you're going through. So get out of that situation. I always suggest to people never go from one stressful situation to another. So if your work life is stressful and your home life is stressful, go get a cup of coffee. And I'm not talking about the drive-thru. I'm talking about go sit in a Starbucks for a while. Figure out what you like to do. Go shopping. If you're like me, go to Golf Galaxy and go hit some balls if you need to, right? Do something to alleviate that stress. Never go from one stressful situation to another. But in the case of burnout, most of the time it means a change in venue. It means a change in position. Get them out of there. Get them refreshed, right? Because nothing works better than that for burnout. So Stephen, one of the things I want you to think about is why you're burnt out, why you're experiencing these issues with your boss, right? Have a conversation with him. I know you think he's unapproachable, but you still have to have a conversation with him. And similar to that CFO, there are certain things that you need to go into that conversation with, saying to him, listen, this has to happen. For my mental health, this has to happen. I need to make some changes. And I'm hoping you're aboard with me, but if not, it's okay. I understand. And most of the time, it goes pretty well for people, right? Especially if your boss has a heart, especially if they didn't even realize what you were going through. But you still have to have the conversation with them. And at that point, if they do nothing, certainly you can go to HR, certainly you can go above their head. I always suggest to people, obey the chain of command. If I was your boss's boss and you came directly to me instead of your boss, I would be a little irritated. My first question would be, have you talked to your boss about this? And if you said no, I would be like, go be a big boy, right? Go and talk to your boss first. Now, if they don't do anything about it, then it's my problem. Then please come back to me. And I'm probably going to circle back with your boss and try to find out whether or not the issue's been alleviated, what the plan is, that type of thing. But have that conversation. You do have some resources. Sometimes moving out of a situation is just distracting yourself. Make sure that you spend time on yourself. I tell people all the time, if you want to really live a stress-free life, or as stress-free as you can get, you got to be a little bit selfish. Now, I did not tell you to turn into a selfish person. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying 1%, 2%, a small percentage. I ask classes, do you take time for yourself? Right? Do you take time for yourself? And I'm not talking about hanging out with the family or doing something with the kids or whatever. Do you take time to do things that only you like to do? Right? And Stephen, I would suggest that you do something like that, right? To start to take your mind off of work, to be able to compartmentalize, to be able to separate things out and move out of that situation, right? So hopefully that helps, Stephen. I think it would be a good idea to do some of these things. And I wish you all the best of luck. And obviously, that I'm a resource for you. I hope this helps you guys as well. I know some of the concepts when it comes to burnout are a little deep, but you can't avoid this kind of stuff. The worst thing to do is ignore the issue. So hopefully you kind of understood the intent of the episode is to really help you guys. I certainly would suggest that if it's far beyond what we talked about, that you seek some mental health professional out there. The funny part about mental health is, it used to be back in the day, oh my God, you go into a psychologist, psychiatrist, right, and you were shunned. Now, it's incredible how much that has changed. I went to church one time, and it was standing room only the 4 weeks that they did mental health. They really focused on that. And it was amazing how many people either experiencing it or have someone they know is experiencing it. So it's not a badge of honor to ignore it anymore. It's certainly not an embarrassing thing. Go seek out a professional if you need help, because they really can help you. I know I have loved ones who have done it, and they are completely different people now. So that would be my advice to you guys. So moving forward, we'll look forward to episode 18. If you have not picked up the book yet, please make sure you do so. I think you guys will really like this. A lot of the concepts, including the concepts today, you'll find in the book. Remember, you can pick it up on Amazon. It's available paperback and ebook, soon to be on Audible. It's a perfect way to get your employees off to a great start in 2026. So go ahead and pick that up. In our next episode, episode 18, I'm going to be coaching Raphael in Plymouth. I travel to Plymouth a lot, and He's got an issue. I'll just kind of read it for you. This is, really, he's got a high potential employee and he wants to get them to the next level. He's definitely worried that he's going to lose this guy because he's outgrowing his position. So this is an issue with a lot of individuals, especially when you've got so much time and effort and training put into that individual, and they're just kind of outgrowing their position, yet there's no place for them to go. There's not another position opened up, or there's, due to budgetary restrictions, there's really not a lot of options for them. But there are ways to handle this. So we'll certainly attack that, and Raphael, I'll certainly be covering that for you. In the meantime, guys, thank you for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Good luck with your leadership and management journey, and we'll see you in episode 18.